I think it's fair to say that throughout the 90s, the Game Boy pretty much dominated the handheld market. There were some experiments at the time as well, few competitors, specifically Sega with their Game Gear, but only like 1 or 2 kids had the Game Gear. The vast majority of us had a Game Boy, whether it was the Brick, the Pocket, or eventually the Color. But there were some weird experiments even outside of that Game Gear. I'm sure there was one kid somewhere on the block that had an Atari Lynx for some reason. There's also the Wonder Swan, which was actually a pretty cool system that doesn't really get a lot of credit. But there was one other system that I actually think was really, really good, and it just wasn't around long enough for people to really get the hang of, pick up, and check out. And that was the Neo Geo Pocket Color. In fact, I think all things considered, this right here could be viewed as SNK's best overall system. Now that of course is going to annoy some people hearing that, considering there was like the AES, for example, which from a technical standpoint, very impressive system, but the overall view from the consumer, this had to be SNK's best system because they could actually buy it. See, during the 90s, the AES was viewed as this super expensive, super premium system because it debuted at like $650, and that was in the early 90s. We're freaking out now about there possibly being a $600 Xbox Series X. Even $500 has some people a bit concerned. $650 at the beginning of the 90s is unheard of if you really think about it, but they did it, and unfortunately for SNK, it wasn't their best when it comes to actually making money, whereas this system debuted at the end of the 90s at $70 and actually started to sell all right. In fact, in just a few months, they had control of 2% of the handheld market in the United States, which might not sound like a lot, but considering it's up against Pokemon and the Game Boy, that's pretty good. So today, I wanted to go over the Neo Geo Pocket Color, unbox one here, open it up, and talk a bit about it. So first, let's start with the box itself. I really like the design. It's this big screaming yellow box. So when you walk by in the stores, which eventually it did find its way to like Walmart and other big box retail stores. Originally, it was an exclusive for an online store, which is strange, but maybe they wanted to test the market, I'm not sure. But when you walk past this, obviously it sticks out like a sore thumb on the shelves. This one is like the lighter blue model, and I do also have kind of the carbon fiber black model as well, but I wanted to get this one just so we could unbox it, check it out, and get a different color of the Neo Geo Pocket Color. It says blue right there. And if we flip it over, we of course can take a look at some of the games that they show us here, as well as more information that I would expect. Like, there is a lot of text on the back here, but they do boast several things that this system had over even the Game Boy Color at the time. It has, as you can see, a 16-bit CPU. They don't say it back here, but it also had more than twice the amount of available RAM than the Game Boy Color did. It has a larger screen as well, and 40 hours of continuous play, which is even quite a bit better than the Game Boy Color. And obviously that blows past everything else that was on the market. The Game Gear ate, what, 6 AA's in a couple of hours? This used 2 AA's for, as they advertise here, 40 hours of play. Even if it's like 30 to 40 hours somewhere in there, that's still very, very good compared to everything else around it. And it started to really paint the picture as to what SNK was going for here. Rather than try to make this ultra powerful, super equipped handheld for hundreds of dollars, they decided to try to take some of the better features of their platforms and kind of shrink them down and put them into a handheld that was attainable for a lot of people, but also very functional on the go. Also, I really like the logo, by the way, the Neo Geo Pocket Color, and then the P here in the middle with the different colors kind of coming off of it. I don't know, the logo just really stuck out to me and was pretty cool, but let's go ahead and open this guy up here. And one thing I noticed about this, by the way, we're gonna open it up and I'll show you, is that it comes with like 4 different instruction manuals. Rather than have like one really thick instruction manual, these are all foldouts, but these are all in different languages, and they opted just to put several different fold-out brochure-like instruction manuals in different languages. Yeah, so that was kind of an interesting thing for them to do here, but it's pretty straightforward. I mean, there are some oddities about the Neo Geo Pocket Color that I hadn't really seen on other platforms at the time, which we'll go over, but this has 2 AA batteries that you install, but then it also has kind of like a 2032 battery, one of like the kind of the flat disc-shaped batteries, and it needed that because it had a really cool idea, which was that it had kind of like this menu system if you didn't have a cartridge in. Now let's quickly go over the system before we turn it on and go through the menu. The power button at the top here, the speaker is down here right below this 8-way joystick. It has been dubbed the clicky joystick, by the way, and you might already be able to tell why if I just kind of move it around. Yep, it gets this really satisfying click whenever it hits any of the 8 directions. This is a system that was designed first and foremost for fighting games, SNK, Neo Geo. Shocker, right? Yes, fighting games were definitely a focus on this system, which is really impressive, by the way, for a handheld, considering the thing next to it was the Game Boy Color that was really not set up well for fighting games, is what I'll say. Definitely not when compared to this one. We also have A and B on the right here, with B being the outside button and A being on the inside. Option at the top here, there is no select. So we'd be used to like a start and select. We're actually left with just one button, and that is option. The power button was just that to turn it on and off. It wasn't actually used in games for any functionality. Now, on the bottom here, they opted to put the volume slider here. It's actually on a wheel that just turns for up and down volume, not on the sides. They left the sides completely blank here. So there's nothing there. And then on the top, we have our little port here where you can use like a link cable to plug in. And then on the bottom, we still had our headphone jack and power input. So if you get one of the cables that lets you plug into the wall, and I believe they had a rechargeable battery pack for this. It was only on the market for like less than a year, so I'm sure not a ton of accessories were made for this thing. Now, if we come around to the back here, we do have our slot for our game. Here is Samurai Showdown 2. It just sits in here and it remains flush with the system completely. In fact, it kind of just sinks into the system, which is good, again, for portability. We do have our battery compartment here that houses 2 AA batteries. Again, 40 hours according to them. And then we have a compartment here for our system battery. This is where you would insert the 2032. Let me see if we can pop this guy open. And the 2032, of course, is designed to keep the clock. So it does have an entire menu system where it can keep the clock, check the world time, all of this. This is actually a Sony 2032. Looks relatively fresh from, I guess, the person I bought it from maybe just went ahead and had that already installed before they sent it off, so that's good. Now, we all know when you turn a system on, it has to have a really good introduction, right? It just has to. The Game Boy Color, very, very basic, right? It just has the Game Boy that goes across the Game Boy Color logo, and then it makes the ding. Or you have the Game Boy Brick, where it has the logo slowly drop down and make the ding. This one has its own animation, and it's actually pretty cool. I mean, come on, that's a pretty good start of animation and sound, right? It's probably over the top and it takes a little while, but I don't know, it's really neat. And ever since I first turned one of these on, it's kind of stuck with me. Anyway, this is our pocket menu, as they have it titled at the top. It has quite a few things you can do here, and it even has some menu music. You can turn it up and you can hear it. Pretty cool. Now, I will say some of these are not really something you would use pretty consistently. It does have a calendar, the world time, a horoscope, which is funny. You basically just put in any date and it will then kick back. So if we go in here and we just kind of go, okay, we'll just say January, we'll say that's fine, like just like that. It'll tell you your sign. And then it'll also give you a star system based on, I guess, your money, health, romance, general. Yeah, it's an interesting idea, I guess. So we'll just go back to the menu. I've only really used that a few times just to see what it would say and what the star system is. I don't imagine a lot of people are going to that horoscope every single day when they had a Neo Geo Pocket Color. But they do have the world time, which is kind of neat. So you can go in here and you can take a look at any of the different times. it will basically convert them for you. So that's, I guess, kind of neat there. And if we go back here, we can also look at the settings, which what's interesting about the Neo Geo Pocket Color, you can change the language straight up in the menu. And if a game has it designed on like the cartridge, it will then change the text to that language that you have set based on the system. Kind of neat there. Now, if we go out here, yeah, we're just gonna pick English. And if we go back here, we can also check the different color schemes that they have, because of course this is the Pocket Color, so you can pick blue, green, or I just stick with the classic just like that. And then they also have this alarm. So you can go in here, you can set the alarm, and it will actually wake itself up and start to ring. Yeah, so if I turn this off here, check this out. That's right, if you were going over to a friend's house for a sleepover back in the day and you forgot your alarm clock, well, you got your Neo Geo Pocket Color on you, so you're good to go. I think just how feature-packed the system was at the time, without even a game being in it, was pretty cool, because if you turn on like a Game Boy Color without a game, it doesn't do anything, like at all. Whereas this actually had some stuff to do, which was pretty cool. But when you put a game in, how does it play? Now, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of games for this. In fact, I have one, Samurai Showdown 2. I don't even think there are that many games in the US, to be honest, to really get anyway. But I figure we can check out, obviously, a fighting game, because that probably makes the most sense in with the joystick on the side, and of course it being SNK. So let's talk about the obvious. The screen, this or even the Game Boy Color, I gotta be honest, I have a hard time remembering how I dealt with this, because the screen is pretty hard to see. I have to hold it at an angle just for the camera to even pick it up. But you can see, I mean, the colors on the screen are pretty good. There is an entire backlit screen, LCD, that I'm looking into getting for the other one. I'll probably just leave this one stock and then change out the screen in the other system. But we can go through here and just go ahead and pick out a character and start running through. This stick is set up very, very well for fighting games. For platformers, it would be a different story. I could see some accidental presses compared to a D-pad, but with a fighting game where you're based on doing rolls or quarter circles, I mean, this is it right here. SNK did a good job trying to take really what they've done in the homes at the time with their AES, which came with, I mean, think about that, they came with an arcade stick, right? That was their controller for it. So you had a system that was designed to basically be an arcade at home, and they wanted to take that to where it could also be on the go, but not cost hundreds of dollars. This, I think, is a pretty good compromise. It wasn't like super crazy looking with the screen, obviously. I think for the most part, it runs fighting games really, really well. Definitely better than the Game Boy Color. A lot of it has to do with the overall processor being more powerful, having more RAM, all of those things played together. But some of the weak points would be the sound isn't the greatest. Even when compared to the Game Boy Color, I'd say the Game Boy Color has better sound overall. So if we kind of play this, you'll be able to hear it. It's just, I mean, it's very rudimentary. In fact, I think it has to do with just the amount of channels or sound channels that it has available to it, because some games will do things like, oh, would you rather have voices or sound effects essentially from the characters, or would you rather have music? Like, that is a choice in some games, which is kind of funny. But I think for the most part, for a gameplay perspective with the controls, it's pretty good. All right, so now that we've gone ahead, unboxed it, played the system, and even talked a little bit about its history, let's go ahead and get this guy apart now. And the nice thing about this is it's really not hard to get apart. There's not a ton of screws involved to just getting to the motherboard. So in total, there were 6 screws, and what was really weird is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these were all Phillips, and then they put one tri-wing screw down here. I don't know if that was just as like a security measure because they saw that Nintendo was doing that and they figured it would work to kind of keep people out of the system. Very, very strange, but that's what they did. So make sure you have a tri-wing handy, or one of these tri-tip screwdrivers handy. You got to open up your Neo Geo Pocket Color. But as soon as the back is off, I mean, there's the board. It's super straightforward. Now you can immediately see how basic this board is. There's really not like a ton to it. I mean, we have our main chip dead center right there for SNK, their 16-bit CPU, all of that built in, but we do have kind of this plastic backing here. It almost looks like a D-pad on the other side, but that is for our joystick that is directly on the other side here. Yeah, they had to dedicate that much space to make sure this joystick was good. I also want to point out that SNK was kind enough to actually include where screws go in these holes so you don't accidentally put one through, I guess, here or here, where the screws would go through the casing. It's a small thing, but it's a nice touch just in case you're opening up the system. So after you unscrew, I think it's 3 different screws on the board, you do have to remove the cap for your joystick here so that it will pop out the other side. Otherwise, this will of course kind of sandwich that plastic and keep it from being removed. So put that to the side. It just pushes on there and it's pretty secure, so you have to very carefully kind of angle it out of there. But once you have that done, you can start to lift the entire system board out. You can see we have our screen plugged in here, so I'm just very carefully going to unhook it, and we should be able to start lifting this guy out. And we have our board as well as our buttons here, and then our speaker, which was held in with some clips on the front. And then we have our screen right here, which is pretty much seized in. I don't really have any reason to take the screen out. It's just kind of sitting in there. But on the other one, when I do replace this with a backlit screen, which maybe we'll do here in a tech wave, just let me know if that's something you're interested in seeing, the Neo Geo Pocket Color with a full backlit LCD. We would of course be removing it and replacing it. I think that'd be really cool because that is probably the biggest weak point, obviously, of any of these generation systems or the screens. Now we have a couple of tabs here for the joystick. That's for the plastic piece to slowly come up very carefully. So that's our joystick right there that rests inside, moves around so it can hit all these different points. And we can actually see our spring, and this is where it gets a little dicey because you don't want to lose any of this stuff. Okay, so that goes aside there. And the way this works is we have 4 different buttons, right? And the idea here is that you have kind of this cross shape that then sits here, and when you move the joystick around, which does kind of free float in there, by the way, it will then run in and press any of these directions. So you have 4 different points that get pressed, and it comes up with a nice click whenever they're touched. So the tension of the spring, the tactile feel of these buttons, and the overall pretty clever design to get something like this into a handheld really, I think, comes together very, very well to make this work. We also have the nice SNK logo there, along with the date that this was created, 12/18/1998. It's interesting that they have like this 2 kind of tone design for the motherboard, whereas this side it's white with kind of the green, I guess, accents for the text, and then on the back here it goes back to the standard green board with white. I don't know, it's interesting that they went that route rather than just being all green, but that's what they did. Also, getting that back together was pretty easy. This is not a bad stick to work on to pop this off. Let's say one of these 4 directions goes bad. You could, yeah, I could see that. You could change those out without too much issue. There's soldering involved, so 2 points on either side or top, and then you could change it out. So it's not like if your stick goes bad, the whole system is just done. You just have to replace those buttons and it should still be fine. And so that is the Neo Geo Pocket Color system from SNK. It was a system that I think SNK was actually onto something with, and I would have liked to have seen them continue this going forward, maybe even coming up with a device to go up against the Game Boy Advance. There was just one problem. SNK kind of ran out of money. Yeah, they kind of went broke at this time. Just months after the Neo Geo Pocket Color hit the United States, SNK was bought out by a company called Aruz, whose original plan was to use SNK's IPs for pachinko machines and gambling and all of that. Yeah, we were gonna have King of Fighters on slot machines. The original idea was that they would do that and then also provide financial backing for SNK, but they took SNK and decided to start liquidating pretty much everything. Now, they eventually figured this out, SNK did, and they broke off and created a company by the name of Playmore, and then actually started buying back all of SNK's assets and IPs, eventually renaming themselves SNK Playmore, then dropping Playmore and just being SNK, but the damage was done and the Neo Geo Pocket Color, this line, was forgotten about. It's unfortunate. I think they had something here, but let me know what you guys think about the Neo Geo Pocket Color down below. I'm very curious. Make sure you guys like the video on the way out if you enjoyed it, dislike it if not, and I'll see you next time.